It's Thursday, the 26th of March, 2026. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's go with story number 1. Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers has warned that the Middle East conflict will see inflation higher for longer as the global price of oil soars. The rate of inflation might hit 5% by the middle of the year, according to Treasury modelling, which is way above the RBA's preferred target range of 2 to 3%. Chalmers said that the 2 key considerations were the timing of the end of the war and how long it takes for the global economy to get back on track when that happens. 2 things that we have no control over.
That's right. Total mixed messages about how long the war will last. Seems a little relief inside at the moment. The consensus view among economists is that the Reserve Bank will lift the cash rate again in May, possibly one more time later in the year. Inflation figures released yesterday show the annual pace in February, ahead of the outbreak in hostilities and surge in the price of oil, was 3.3% in underlying terms, 3.7% on a headline basis. The big drivers were higher prices in housing, food and recreation and culture. The data has pretty much been superseded by what's going on in the Middle East.
Quick question with that notice, Sean. Isn't there a risk that given the jump in petrol prices, and it has been a very sharp jump in petrol prices, and the lift in interest rates, that the Reserve Bank could actually just put the economy into a recession if it does keep on hiking the cash rate?
Yes, and it knows that. Last week, Governor Michelle Bullock has talked about, not wanting to have a recession, but it's hard to get inflation down. Then, we're going to have to deal with that possibly, i.e. a recession, if you can't get inflation down.
There's a balancing act going on here, right? Because inflation is enemy number 1 and the RBA wants to stomp on it. That's why higher interest rates are likely. But if the price of oil stays elevated and pushes beyond $120 a barrel and more because the Middle East conflict goes on and on, then a global recession is likely.
Yeah, and at that point, the last thing the Reserve Bank wants to do is lift interest rates. So, reading between the lines, monetary policy at the moment is managing for a relatively short spike in oil prices. Now, even if the war ended today, it would take time to get oil flowing again. We're going to have higher prices for quite a few months. If the war goes on, and remember Russia's 10-day war against Ukraine now in its 4th year, well, the Reserve Bank could get caught out, rates will be too high. We could be in for a humdinger of a recession. As Jim Chalmers said yesterday in a press conference, the end of the war cannot come soon enough for the economy.
On to story number 2, Sean, and you mentioned the mixed messages around the war. That continues, right? We heard yesterday from Donald Trump that Iran had given the US a very big present, this is a quote, a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money, and that had convinced the president that the US is dealing with the right people in Iran. That came after reports that the US had sent Iran a 15-point plan to end the war via intermediaries in Pakistan. Israel's Channel 12 News reports that there is a mechanism in the plan that would allow for a 1-month ceasefire during which Iran and the US could really discuss the details of the proposal.
Yeah, let's hope we get there, because as Jim Chalmers said, the end of the war can't come soon enough. Already in Australia, more than 400 service stations are without some types of fuel as a result of the war, including nearly 300 across the country without any diesel at all. Federal government's introduced new legislation to double the penalty for petrol suppliers found to be price gouging. Australia Post yesterday came out and increased the fuel surcharge, which of course senders of parcels will ultimately bear. We are starting to see the impact of all this hitting the bottom line.
Indeed. Story number 3, news of that potential peace plan sent the local share market up 1.85% to 8,534 points, the best single session in a year. The increase added about $55 billion to the value of the bourse.
Yeah, it's finally some good news, I suppose. There were some very big moves. Gold stocks did very well. Critical minerals companies did very well. BHP, Macquarie were both up, but Shields against drones, best on the day, up 19%. Worst, not surprisingly, where the energy companies fell back on the price of oil, which dropped back below $100 an ounce.
Thank you for clarifying what Drone Shield does. It's kind of
I love a company whose name tells us what it does.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? Okay, story number 4. Rio Tinto will receive $2 billion in taxpayer subsidies to secure the long-term future of its massive Boyne aluminium smelter in North Queensland, on the proviso that it backs more than $7 billion worth of new clean energy projects in the state. The federal and Queensland governments will provide $1 billion each to keep the facility going well beyond 2030.
The smelter, which employs about 1,000 people in Gladstone and Weipa, is one of several metals processing facilities across Australia struggling to remain viable because of rising energy costs and other factors. Federal Industry Minister Stuart Ayres said the Boyne deal was one of the most significant decarbonisation and industrial investment commitments in Australian history.
Last one, story number 5. The price of petrol has meant many people are thinking more about electric vehicles. And while the upfront cost put a lot of people off EV sedans, the growth in the used EV car market and Tesla dropping prices over the past year, along with those kind of surging fuel prices, has really helped a resurgence here, Sean. And one sector where EVs are perhaps surprisingly making inroads is the semi-trailer market, with Tesla's semi-truck receiving high praise after a 1-month pilot of the vehicles.
Yeah, so the first Tesla truck was produced at the end of 2022, but it's only this year that the company's really pushed the product. What Truckies like? Cameras around all parts of the truck, so they don't have to jump out and see how close they are to the wall or whatever. They can see it whilst in the cabin. 800-kilometre range, fast chargers, steering wheel in the centre of the cabin rather than the right-hand side in the US. That's a winner, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. There's no clutch or gear shifting. That reduces fatigue. Accelerations are much better than diesel vehicles. Finally, the so-called Semi, that's what Tesla calls it, is much cheaper to run, not just in terms of charging/fuel, but in maintenance as well. So the Tesla Semi apparently is a winner.
No blind spots around the vehicle. Yeah. That's pretty amazing. But God, cool. Having a steering wheel in the centre, God, that'd take some adjusting, right? It feels like that it's fraught with danger.
I was thinking about it. I don't think so. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, but I mean, if you've driven one way like for the last 40 years, lining yourself up with kind of the centre line, suddenly you've got to move everything over by about a metre. It feels like you'd be sideswiping everything in sight. There we go, 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
It is Thursday, the 26th of March, 2026. Forgot the day there for a moment. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.